Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Backyard Barbecue Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hubrees, and as you can see, I have a number of people on the panel today. We are doing our first event where we actually have a live audience. Hopefully you all enjoy the show. I'd like to thank Q Sports Lounge over in Chicago, Illinois, 84th and Kedzie, former firefighter. So we're at his place supporting his business. Thank him for having us out. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce the panel of my co-hosts. You've seen some of them. Well, you've seen all of them before, but I'll allow them for the newcomers to introduce themselves.
So I am Kina, also known as Miss Boutique.
I'm Tasha.
I'm Joe, a.k.a. Willie.
Okay. So this particular segment is a battle of the sexes. So we are here to discuss some various topics that involve a lot of relationship talk. And come on, through the door. Look, one of my other people, come on. Pull it. Pull the door. We'll edit that out. So we'll start off with some of these relationship topics. I asked some of my panel people to come up with some topics, and it was interesting because these are topics that are well known among a lot of people. So we'll start off with the topic of staying in relationships because you are comfortable as opposed to actually being smart. And I'll put you on blast since you're the one that came up with it. So I'll let you start off with that conversation.
It just came to mind, honestly.
Say it with your chest.
So I just suggested the topic of are we comfortable or are we compatible? And so being in relationships in which you're comfortable with that person, everything is familiar, but truly are you compatible with this person? Is this something that can really nurture a long-term commitment, a foundation of sorts, or is it just comfortability? And so a couple of my girlfriends and such have talked about it, and so I said, it's comfort versus compatibility. So I guess the question is, why do we have these relationships?
So what exactly would make you so comfortable to stay in a bad relationship?
I don't know necessarily if it's bad. Not to say, if it's comfort, it's usually a familiarity. If it's toxic, that's a little different. But if
we're talking about staying in a relationship just because you're comfortable, that means that it has to be something that's in some area not good, that's not comfortable, that's toxic. We ain't talking about leaving comfortability and you paying all the bills, he taking you out every day, you happy, you getting allowance. So it has to be something that's making you uncomfortable.
What relationship is this?
All right, an allowance.
Sign me up. No,
Hey, I'm trying to get the black men a little bit of credit here,
I think in the way that it was presented to me, there's a level of, it may even be a level of settling, that it's comfortable in this place and not getting any younger and not really wanting to go out and find or seek anything else. And so it's comfortable, it works, it's functional, but is it truly allowing you to reach your full capacity? Is it truly nurturing all that you truly need? If it's toxic or bad, I get what you're saying, but I think that's a little different. But I think it's more so like, this is just comfortable. It works.
You looking like you itching to jump in there. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm gonna let her finish. I'm gonna let her cook.
Oh no, I'm done. Go ahead. I'm comfortable.
I'd like to add to the pot. I'd like to add to the pot. So are you saying that it can only, at what point does, okay. At what point does purpose have a role? Because when something is purpose, it may not always be, a walk through the park. It might just serve a purpose greater than your every dream being fulfilled in a relationship. And I just think that that's another level of maturity that I think most people lack when entering long-term unions like marriage.
I think the key word is maturity.
What's wrong with being comfortable?
Oh, nothing.
I'm talking to her. She is.
Oh, yeah, that.
I think again it depends on what the ultimate goal is for you or for the purpose of that relationship. Is it something that you're just comfortable because we function well together, we get along well together, our kids go to the same school, or is it is it really compatible? Am I unfulfilled? Because you can be, like you said, in the sense of being unfulfilled, I feel like you could settle, is probably the better way to put it. You could settle, but be comfortable in your settling. There's many that have done it. It happens often. And then if you're settling, sometimes you have to get comfortable with where you are.
You still ain't told me what's wrong with being comfortable.
If you're not reaching your full capacity, or if it's not satisfying you fully, then to me it's uncomfortable.
So basically, you're saying you're not happy with yourself in that relationship.
I didn't say I wasn't happy with myself.
That's what it
in any
sounds like.
relationship. But what I will say is that if you're in a relationship and that is functioning in whatever way, but at the same token there is a greater or a higher that we can meet or achieve, or I want to reach a greater or a higher, or you want to reach a greater or a higher, and I'm comfortable here, then at some point they're at an impasse.
So, excuse me, when I think about moments in my life that I've stayed in places that didn't serve me, there was a balance of, ease and effort that I was always negotiating. I know where I'm at isn't healthy for me, but I also don't have enough energy to do anything about it other than think about what my next step is. So whether that has been employment, where I'm comfortable with the pay, but this stresses me out. I'm comfortable with the lifestyle that it brings me, but it also doesn't allow me to be my best version. I'm comfortable with the geography of my apartment, but my neighbors stress me out. I'm comfortable with the lovemaking in my partnership, but the communication stresses me out, right? There's always something that isn't, that needs more energy in order for my comfort to improve. And so what I found is I often have to ask myself, can I find rest here as is? And if it's a no, I can't ask the other person to change. I always kind of ask myself or work on changing myself at least 3 times before I make a recommendation on what someone else should do for comfort to exist. Because I found that usually the reason why I'm so deeply uncomfortable is it isn't because of what someone is or isn't doing. It's because they're not doing or behaving or speaking in my preferred way.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hey, y'all. Hey. My name's Mila. So happy to be here.
And if you all have, questions or comments, just let us know. Shout it, raise your hand, and we'll get to you. So I agree, with Mila that sometimes, and it doesn't matter what it is, we get comfortable in a certain type of positions and we stay there. Sometimes it's because you don't even just want to put the work in to make another change. It's too much work to start up a new job. I got to go out there and I got to put up a resume. I ain't made no resume in 20 years, but you complain about how much they paying you every week. You complain about the man. I don't want to be out there looking for another man, but he pay all the bills. Go get a job. It's the things that we allow ourselves to put up with in the name of being comfortable is just that's ridiculous, you know, and particularly in relationships based on what we're doing, you know, well, the person, because there's only a few things that contribute to staying in uncomfortable positions. It's either how the person, if you all have kids in the equation, oh, well, they're a good mother, they're a good father, blah, blah, blah. Or they pay the bills, blah, blah, blah. You know, we've been together forever and this is the only person I know. Then it just boils down to one or two things. Like, either stop complaining about it.
And deal with it.
Yeah. You know, just let everybody know that I'm just going to deal with this. And, hey, you know, I know y'all might be looking at me, but I'm just going to deal with it, you know, or just don't say anything about it at all, you know. But it does bring to the subject matter of a person's own self-esteem. So how does that play a part in staying in a comfortable position, your self-esteem, in terms of what you think of yourself, or versus what the person has caused you to think about yourself over the years because you've been staying in a comfortable position? And that could be even, again, that could be even with your job. Your job has made you feel like, hey, this is the best you about to be. We got the best package for you right here. You know, you've been here 20 years. You don't want to go back to school. You don't want to be doing all of that. So how do you all feel like that plays into a person's self-esteem and what they can do about that? Everybody answer at one time.
No, right?
Well, I feel that a person, if they're not happy with themselves, how they look, their career, where they are in life, can't nobody or nothing make them happy. Mm-hmm. You can do everything under the sun for that person, but until they reach that plateau where they're happy with themselves, you can chalk their relationship up.
Okay.
And piggybacking to your point, that has the potential to bring you down,
Yeah.
carrying the weight of the responsibility of someone else's happiness. That is your own responsibility, I feel, in my personal opinion.
I've been guilty of both extreme fear and radical faith.
Do tell.
Right, like been a victim of both. Like with my in my marriage, for example, extremely fearful of caring for 3 kids by myself. Right, even though I've seen many people do it successfully, and I'm a product of a single parent home, never imagined myself being successful at it. So I kind of psyched myself out into being afraid of being alone. Right.
Okay.
Even though I already was alone in a marriage.
In your marriage?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And radical faith in that I got this, I can do this. Having also kind of kept myself away from resources to show that I wasn't so good with solutions. So if I don't go to therapy, if I don't talk about it, I can also pretend that I'm really good at handling it. And so I had to learn over time that my own mind, you know, I was, how do I say this? I was attached to being right, even though it hurt. So I was okay with the thing in front of me, the person in front of me being harmful, as long as I was right about it. Not taking any accountability for, I had every choice to get help, to get support, to leave. And so I lived in fear that stopped me from getting out or believing in myself. And I lived in faith, believing in myself in ways that didn't help me. So it was a bit of a trick of the mind. And I don't know what happened with the mic, but did it? You good?
Okay, show must go on.
Yeah. So, and one thing that I want to bring out, I've been knowing her since the 3rd grade. Like, so I've watched her like in different plateaus of her life, you know, like we wasn't always in contact, but I remember a specific point in time. I was kind of like in the middle of my little life journey as well. But I remember seeing her in the grocery store, and she looked like so different. It wasn't like a physical change. It just was like you wasn't you, like you wasn't the you that I was used to you being. And then, you know, to watch you over the years like progress, like she just got a PhD, you know.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, like, you know, the what she's talking about isn't just a, you know, oh, you know, like you need to do this, you need to do that. Like people that have gone through the struggle, you know, are people that are good to listen to. I mean, and one thing anybody that's listening that might even be in a situation, like everybody has been in a situation before, you know, that happens every day, all the time. You know, you in different situations, but it just doesn't mean that you have to stay, you know, whether it's your job or a relationship or whatever, which, you know, I kind of want to bridge the gap in that conversation with being compatible with people versus being comfortable. We talked about being comfortable with people, but what about if you're in a situation where you are just not compatible anyway? You know, do you still stay based on the comfort? You know that you don't really have too much in common with this person. You know that your goals aren't aligned the same. You know that the way that you think isn't even the same. So how does that play into your process of thinking in terms of moving on, or do you just adapt to the situation that you're in? Because that's another possibility that, hey, I just adapt to where I am. You know, I'll just change my stripes in a sense to blend in with the other person. So do you change your stripes or do you change you?
I don't think neither.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. 'cause it
I don't think you
becomes
change neither because I'm 40, so I am who I am. I'm gonna go to the grave like this. I ain't gonna change and ain't nobody gonna make me change. So
So I'm glad you said that. So when you say that you ain't about to change,
I'm happy
So-
who I am.
okay. Now I'm glad you said that, because who you are, you might be happy with who you are, but that don't mean it's just like people that be on drugs. They be like, "Hey, I'm straight. I'm a functioning
good for me."
crackhead."
Hey.
But that don't mean that shit is right. Like,
Hey,
you know,
right for me might not be right for them.
okay, so that means that in the process of life, like, okay, so I ask you this question.
I have tried to change, and it didn't work. Still,
You tried to change for you, or you tried to
change for the relationship.
for the relationship? Yeah.
So-
We have a question.
Okay, we have a question.
What do you feel you needed to change? You said I need to change. What made you think that a change was needed? You say you won't change. What is the change? What are you referring to?
Well, change would be like sometimes, I work a lot, so
Hold on a second. Just for the sake of the audience, if you didn't hear it, the question was, what do you feel like you needed to change, and why you need to change?
Yes. Why do you need to change, and what is it that you need to change?
Okay, and what is it that you need to change? So that was the question that he's answering.
sometimes attitude, your perspective on life. I go to church every Sunday, so my ex-wife didn't do that. So one time I had to sacrifice my God for the relationship, and that totally didn't work.
You think?
So things of that nature, and I realized then, like, I ain't got no business changing for somebody who's not trying to better the relationship, period. So that's my stick on that.
So first, thank you for sharing that, because I feel like
Yeah.
oftentimes we think about sacrifices in relationships, and that's the first time I've heard a man say that I couldn't get my wife to worship with me.
Yeah.
You know,
usually
and that can be a game changer.
It was.
And I also started to think, like, is there a difference between change, like conceptually, do we think differently about changing and growing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so someone might ask you, like, I need you to change, instead of inviting you to grow. So how do you see the difference between, how have you grown now that you have left that relationship?
Well, I think a lot of people are afraid to be by themselves. And since my divorce, I've been by myself. I've learned to love me for who my mother and father created. I've learned to respect the relationships that I've built the 40 years now versus just trying to please one person and putting everybody else on the back burner. And now I got to come home and fight hell. So I think that's a 50-50. The way you approach the situation is my take. So I approached it in a way like I tried. It didn't work. That's the blueprint I got, and I'm gonna stick the way I am now.
Now they asked you about the non-worshiping wife. I'm going to ask you about the attitude. So you said that you did.
He did.
Yeah.
Worshiping wife.
So what about the attitude part? What
My attitude or hers?
you said yours?
Could work
Oh,
with
but
yours.
my attitude was like, as a kid, my father would say things like, "You keep thinking fat meat greasy," or "You trying my kindness for weakness." So stuff would just build up, and then now my attitude has changed because I've asked you to do this nicely several times. Now we at the 10th, 15th time, and I don't have any results. And so now I'm ticked off. And so now I ain't gonna lie, the whole house had to pay at that time.
So you had a little anger problem.
Oh man, I did. I'm
Okay.
cool now.
Okay. Now you cool because Tasha brought up in a previous podcast a great point. I actually made it one of the short clips, and she said that at times you think that you've changed when you're by yourself, but you can only really know change when you get back into a situation where it challenges the change. So have you been back in a situation where there's
I've
challenges
jumped
to
out
change?
there and I've noticed that I haven't changed my perception of the type of woman I was liking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed that I didn't change the type of woman I was attracted to. So I was always
Kept
trying
the
to
same energy.
I was always trying to run from a woman that was different than my mother. I didn't want to date my mother. And then
No.
every woman I dated, it didn't work out well.
And they were opposite of.
They were the opposite of my mother.
Okay, got it.
So if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a question.
So you said she wouldn't worship. Did she tell you why?
She wasn't raised like that.
She wasn't raised like
Right.
that.
So the question was, did she? I'm sorry.
Did she tell you
Question
why
was,
she
Did she ask?
worked?
Did she ask?
Did she give me an answer?
Right,
why?
as to why?
Yeah, she wasn't raised like that.
Okay. And so were you exhibiting the behavior that you said out your mouth in the home?
At times, yeah. I ain't gonna lie to you. Sometimes it was rocky because you got two different backgrounds.
Worship with you.
So,
She didn't want to follow you because what you said and what you did was two different things.
So
it is that scripture that say that they'll be won over without a word, but I ain't nobody's pastor.
I want to also just make mention to what she just said. It's much like buying a home and you know the foundation is cracked. Those weren't her values.
Right.
I'm thirsty.
So
And I tried to make it.
you tried to make it the thing, and it just
And
wasn't
then,
jiving. Yeah,
I'm going to church. She want to go to the club. So
yeah.
When I think about, I like the part. There's a quote: "No good sailor has learned to sail on calm seas." Right.
Right.
So we have to practice. And there's this story about a woman who was the most angry and volatile. She would go off on anybody, and for months the townspeople didn't see her. And so after maybe like 6 months, like she came from out of the forest and they were like, hey, where have you been? She's like, I've changed. I'm calm. Nothing makes me mad. And another person came up to her and was like, so nothing makes you mad? And she's like, nothing makes me mad. By the fifth person saying, hey, are you sure you changed? She went the fuck off. I told you I've changed, right? And so to the point, we can practice in isolation and around people that will co-sign and not hold us accountable. And it isn't until we're out in the world or somebody, you know, I had to learn that the man that liked me was the man that told me I wasn't who I thought I was, right? No man has ever pulled my card. And I'm like, man, so I just been having bad habits and great eyebrows for 35 years and nobody's going to say anything to me? I think I'm an angel. Right? And I believe this, right? Because men that realize, one, you're not ready, and two, they don't really like you like that, will allow for you to be whoever it is that you wish to be, as long as they get what they want from you. And so this dude comes along, and I was like, you know, I can help you. He laughed in my face. And I was like, fuck wrong with you? He was like, you need to use all of your energy to help yourself. I was like, God, ouch. Ouch. Oh, and he was like, how do you think you can love me? He was like, and your love hurts. I was like, oh.
Wow.
So are we still going out tomorrow? He was like, yeah. You know, like he didn't abandon me. But he also helped me learn how to acknowledge that I have delusions of grandeur. I believe that I am someone that I have no evidence of, like nothing. And I have people around me that will tell me I am who I am because I also don't hold them accountable. And that has not been easy, rocking with a man that will continuously, and it isn't something, and your homegirls will tell you, like, girl, he only doing that so he can get away with whatever. I'll be like, okay, let me stop listening to you, because you alone like a motherfucker.
That part.
And so once I dropped them and I started listening to him inviting me to mind my own business and let him mind his, that is when I started to learn, no, I am not so kind. I am not so forgiving. I am not so loving. I am not so consistent. I just imagine myself to be.
And to Mila's point, there's a quote out
That's
there
deep.
that says, true love looks a lot like correction. And that's not something we're willing to face on most days. So
Can you repeat that? True love?
true love looks like correction.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Me too.
That's deep. And, you know, to piggyback on what she said, Mila, I guess if you don't have a person that really allow you to take a look at yourself and, like she said, you know, actually tell you, because in a lot of relationships you have people that they just want to be with you, you know, like, and they'll accept anything just to be with you. The problem with that is that that's just temporary. You know, it's like you going to the car lot and you was on a bus and you just went and got a car. It wasn't even a car that you would have gotten if you would have, you know, your credit was right or you had more money. You just went and got this because it's okay for you to get around right now. But come the summertime, you don't even want to drive that car outside. You like, this ain't even what I want, you know. Like, I really don't want this car. You know, you trying to catch a ride with everybody. They like, well, you got a car, but you don't want to drive that car. You know, so it's you know, people get into relationships based on sometimes just the surface, you know, and be involved with people who don't tell them anything about themselves. Like, I don't like this about you, you know. And I don't know if it's because they're scared, you know. Maybe they are just afraid to say that, hey, I don't like this part about you, you know. This irritates me about you. And so I guess on that same note, what do you all feel about that? Like, how comfortable are you with telling the person that you're with, I don't like when you do this. This irritates me. You know, can you please stop doing this? And how soon do you feel okay with telling them that?
I'm extremely comfortable. No, because here's the thing: if we're in a relationship, we should be able to be honest with each other. So being able to comfortably say, you know, this thing was a trigger for me, or you did this to me, or however, should be in an honest, safe, loving space. It shouldn't be in a space where I'm sparring, like you did this, woo woo, and now I'm, you know, it should be and it should also be done in love. You know, you catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar. So if you are saying it in a way where I can't wait to get home and I'm finna cut you with all the knives I got, you know, that's you're gonna receive what you give. But if it's something in the extent of, okay, I really want to address the other night, you know, this happened, it made me feel this way, we've talked about this, whatever the case may be, I should be able to freely say this, and I should be able to also willingly accept it if it comes in. I as you said, as you're 40, I'm in a place where if I can't be honest and I can't say what it is, I don't even know why we're doing this, because at this point we're not in a relationship. We just hanging out. We want to evolve and grow, and so I want you to be in a safe place, and I want to create that space, and I want myself to be in that place. So I do believe I have evolved to a place where I am more comfortable with saying it, but I will say, having evolved to that place, it is how you say it. So much, not so much.
I was about to tiptoe on to that point, but before we go, we got an audience question or a comment.
So your bag, when you stated that something may be scared to communicate, it's like, what if that person has no skill set and that they weren't, nobody else taught them how to do that?
Right.
You grew up in a dysfunctional family where if I say something to you, there's going to be an immediate chain of reaction. And so I just avoid having the conversation. Out of scaredness of past trauma, not for the thing that you actually done or could have, but I think as you said, you evolve. So what would you tell somebody that has gotten to that point, how do you identify that you are, number one, asking what the true problem is, but number two, how do you teach somebody how to communicate that to someone?
No.
So the question was, how do you communicate with someone and you might be afraid to because you haven't really been taught how to communicate?
So I think that's also a part of well, first of all, I don't believe in masking anything. It's not going to add any value to the relationship. At some point, it's going to come up like vomit. It's going to be a problem. We're going to have to clean it up, address it, and it depends on how the chips fall. I don't believe in holding grudges. I don't believe in letting things. I don't believe in letting things fester. I just don't. So if it has the potential to trigger or create a trigger or snowball into something, we have to have a conversation and address it. That's the first part in regards to the masking. In terms of that, I will say part of that relationship and that growth is that you learn the other person. I personally try to take the time to really learn my spouse. Really, you know how they say you people watch? I kind of like people watch my spouse in a sense. So I try to learn my spouse. I try to understand. And so 9 out of 10, not saying that I'm 100%, but I may have already peeped that this is going to be a situation. So how I come into that situation, I have to then measure myself or monitor myself to have the appropriate level of whatever is needed for us to get to that resolution. So whether I need to have the appropriate level of patience in this conversation, whether I need to have the appropriate level of communication. How am I communicating? Am I communicating when things are going to get sent up? You know, whatever the case may be. So I have to be mindful of me in that regard, because we are in this. We are relatable to one another. We are in a relationship, and the goal is to be able to grow, to evolve. And so whatever it needs to be said in the way that needs to be said it, then I want to be mindful. Now, not saying that you couldn't take all those things in consideration and it still blows up. At that point for me, and I've been there, but at that point for me, I really have to measure.
Never gonna get it. Never gonna.
I'm sorry,
get it.
we got a little Halloween situation going on. The lights, the lights are just doing its own little thing.
Right.
Oh man.
So at that point for me, when it completely blows up, regardless, I think I for myself will try to measure like the intention behind their reaction. Were they, and again, eventually we got to get to a place where we talk about it. But is this something where you're just blowing up because you're just mad, you don't want to address it, you don't want to this? Like, where can I take accountability? Where are they possibly lacking accountability? What do we need to understand? Because if we're not going to get to a resolution, then we can't have this issue every time we need to be able to talk. And then I also think pick and choose your battles. Not everything, unless it becomes something that can fester, not everything necessarily always has to be addressed. I feel like I need to change that just a little bit. Because go ahead, I'm sorry.
Listening and sharing is not easy. Has anybody ever had an experience where the words came out of your mouth, but the meaning was taken in the most sinister, malicious, and untrue way?
Absolutely.
Right? So now reverse that. How many times has someone given you words and you, in your mind, chose the most sinister, malicious, and hurtful interpretation, and the person in front of you is trying desperately to get you to pick up what they're putting down, and you keep saying, well, I heard what that means to me, right? We all have our definitions. There are words that are loaded, and so one of the first things that I practice is choosing to understand what you mean by what you say. Mm-hmm. I'm choosing to understand what you mean by what you say. I know how you're using that word in that context in this conversation. Why? Because I love you. So I'm not going to color the words to avoid the conversation. And that's not easy. And also, one has to acknowledge when you're lying to yourself. You're pretending that your intention is solid. And your ego is saying, okay, I'm doing this out of love, but really it's shade. Ego is so tricky. And when people pick up on that, we mad about it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when they're like, nah, it's not what they think, they say, that doesn't feel accurate, that doesn't feel true, and we go even harder because we're not okay with, okay, you caught me. And so practicing communication requires being self-accountable for why you're even fucking talking. And as women, I've learned, as a woman, I ask the dumbest questions because I'm afraid to ask the real one. Yep. And I'm afraid to ask the real one because I'm not ready for the real answer. And I've already imagined the answer that would hurt me. Like, I've already created the entire... My life is 20 years ahead of me. I've already thought about all the people, what they said, what I was going to say in response to, how it feels, and I'm basically a wizard. I'm a wizard, and I try and make everything in front of me fit my imagination. And so communication can be difficult when you don't allow yourself to be in the present moment. When you choose not to listen, because you can be out here thinking about something else. But if you're working with someone and you're trying, because you said, how do you teach someone? You can't teach what you don't practice, right? So if you don't have a practice that you can share a story, or you can say, when I did this. People don't like being chastised and like what you do, because you got 3 fingers pointing back at you. Mm-hmm. So give them 3 stories of how it is when you were in that position, what made you aware. When you were in that position, how it felt. When you were in that position, what it took for you to change it. And then invite them to see, well, maybe some of those apply to you. I don't know which ones do, but I know this has benefited me in learning how to listen, learning how to share.
I'm going to add So you mentioned that sometimes you can respond in a way that a person didn't mean it. Now, when I was listening to that, I'll contribute that also to when people enter and exit into relationships. Sometimes they don't give themselves enough time to really. They'll jump out of one relationship and then into another one without taking the time to actually find out what I contributed to the fall of the last relationship and what my faults were. I remember my father asking me, I got married early, and when I got a divorce, my father said, so what caused the marriage to fail? And I said, well, she did this, she did that, she did that. He was like, and you need to spend some more time by yourself so you could, because you said she did this, she did that, she did that, but nowhere in the equation did you mention yourself.
Right.
And so sometimes reactions, like I drive truck, so I always carry baby wipes with me. So when I go to the bathroom, I got a baby wipe because I believe that when you don't wipe your ass all the way, it's still some remnants of shit that's in your ass. It's yeah.
is the analogy.
You gotta add some more.
That's some
Are
real
y'all
shit.
following?
Yeah,
That's some real shit.
that's real. Yeah, that's real shit.
That's real shit.
It's real shit still attached to you. So if you don't clean up the shit that was left from the last relationship, then it'll still be there going into the next relationship, and then you still just carry that on to the other person. So your reaction is based on you carrying a attitude and a disposition towards a person that didn't even have anything to do with them. It just was the remnants of the shit that you didn't get off your ass from before.
That's some nasty shit.
Okay, another audience question or comment.
Absolutely. So that's a lot to unpack, right? So here in Mitchell, what do you do when that person may not have the skill set to communicate? Because a lot of times, that's really what's happening. People don't know how to articulate what they're really feeling. And when we don't know the real definition, connecting the dots, we say one thing, we mean another. And we go through this. Let's look it up. Forget how I've always used the word. What do the word actually mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no skill set for the person. They don't know how to properly communicate. Don't know how to address a situation in a relationship. And then I think the scenario was that irritates me. Well, that don't mean what the person is doing is wrong. It might just irritate your ass. Because
Right.
of a past situation or a trigger. So also articulate that to say, hey, maybe can you do this a different way? Not necessarily just because it irritates me. Just because it irritates me don't mean it's wrong. It's just not my preference.
Right.
Right.
And so, because we don't know how to break that down, and that goes back to
You
what
you laying some good. Hold on.
about getting to know the person, right? But back to this last point you just made, E, that we don't date everybody. We
Bring your ass up
Nah,
here.
come on.
Bring your.
No, I just want the audience to be able to hear what's being said.
She's like, let me grab it.
Come on, strut honey, strut honey.
Call her Hershey.
Yes, that would be me. Watch out, Nikki. It's a sweet tooth messing around with me.
Uh-oh.
So people don't know how to articulate what it is they're feeling. You just touched on something to me that's really big. What I say and what I mean is two different things, right? And if no one's ever, back to what I walked in when you all was saying, no one ever addressed it, no one ever held you accountable to, here you go again, saying one thing, but you really mean something else. And walking through that thing and owning it, back to you, I have to own that I'm messed up. I have to own that I'm so mixed up, right, that I can't even work through what it is I'm seeing in you or why it's bothering me. Like I said, it don't mean what they're doing is wrong. It's just a trigger for you. And so we're selfish as, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do nothing but go to a spiritual standpoint. I'm sorry, but not sorry. But from a carnal standpoint, our flesh get involved and it's all about us. versus thinking about the other person. And so when you don't even know you're broken to heal, addressing situations usually is, back to your point, is malicious. Where's the intent? Go home, I'm gonna cut you. When I say this, I'm about to check you, especially in our culture. Especially today with our black women, we wear like a badge of honor.
Come on, man.
Versus a conversation of,
Ugh.
hey, let's just talk. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to get an understanding, right? And we just assume people know how to communicate. And people don't. You know, even those that think they're the best at it, because you wordy and you slick and you got wit, doesn't mean you can actually communicate how you're feeling and what you're expecting of the other person. We too busy making, all the noise. People get upset with me because I'm quick to say, don't give me all the noise. Just stick to what you're saying, because my brain don't even work like that. And that's another thing. We assume people, all of our brains work differently
same.
because
What
of
I'm
the way
saying,
we
you're
were
registered.
programmed.
Right.
And the way we were programmed. So I think it's a lot to unpack with how do you communicate? Do you feel comfortable communicating? It might be a person who have mommy issues or separation issues. So if I like you, I'm not going to tell you I don't like that you do that, because I don't want you to leave me either. But then I end up accepting things I necessarily don't want. Doing things I don't want to do because I don't want to make you unhappy. And then it builds.
And then
It
it's
builds
unhappy.
and builds.
Then
So
it's unhealthy.
I think that's why reevaluating what dating looks like, going
Yes.
through seasons with people, reevaluating what that dating process is for, getting to know somebody. How do they act at a restaurant? How do they act during death? How do they act during a broke period? How do they act during a period of don't know what I feel? So that's why it's really important. You were saying date, get to know your spouse, but first you got to get to know you. Right?
Have you been able to pick up what people communicate without using words? Right? We have 5 senses. And people not only say, but they don't say. They do and they don't do. So we smell, we hear, we feel, we taste. And I also realize that men communicate very differently from women. So how in tune are you all with picking up what people are communicating when words are not enough or the words are not there?
Go ahead. Yes? Okay. To your question, and then also just tagging on Auntie Toy's point. I'm in a relationship where not even a month out of my grandmother passing, we met. So he met me during a grieving point. But not only that, my father passed away 6 months prior to that. So it was a double grieving point. He got to see me and meet me at our rawest point, only for 6 months later for him to lose his father. I often tell him, I feel that God is allowing us to have all these rocky points early because we gonna have to know how to navigate this thing, because this is not gonna be easy. No relationship is. It's gonna take work. And so he had to quickly figure out she doesn't need me to say anything. She just needs me to hold her right now. Men aren't going to be like, hold me, unless they being, silly, But I had to figure out
That's
with
what y'all
him
want, though,
on the
right?
phone, he sounded fine about his dad. But this is also a very new relationship. Let me come lay eyes on you. And I can see that you need me greater than I had imagined on this phone. So to answer your question, I think that takes just really another level of being spiritually connected to our Heavenly Father, to be able to truly tap in, to understand what the other person needs, but then using your spiritual eyes, like not just your natural eyes. Because like I said, I couldn't tell just by listening to this man on the phone what he needed, but it wasn't until I could lay eyes on him. He didn't have to tell me what he needed. He needed a nap. He needed a home-cooked meal, and he needed me to just be there for him in the way that I could without a whole lot of me, Latasha, running her mouth. Because I could have said a lot of things, but there's nothing to say. I know his pain. I knew it. But there's nothing to say. Nothing I can say is going to bring his father back, just like on our first date, me telling him about my father and my grandmother. He was like, whoa. And it made me emotional on the first date. I was like, well, that was nice. Probably not gonna see him again. But anybody in this room that knows me, I can be sappy. But we're also talking about two well-beloved people in my life. And he had to get to know that side of me very quickly, just like I had to get to know that side of him quickly and get to figure out what he needed without using words. Someone had a question. Okay.
Question, Chair.
Hey, this is the question, Chair. So my question would be, you guys spoke to wisdom. Can you hear me? You spoke to wisdom, you spoke to self-development, you spoke to maturity. How do you communicate what it is that you're saying to a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, that they're prepared to have healthy communications of expressing their needs, their desires, processing without words? Because this is great, but you all are within the all same age group and or more. I don't know, you know. What you raise? You
I'm just ready
I'm
to
16.
respond.
I don't
look.
know.
So in our mind and our hearts, right? But we're looking at this from a lens where most of us have learned from our past, and we've had the opportunity to grow and develop and allow for our past to be an assessment. But how do we steer our youth, those of us that have children or nieces and nephews, how do we steer our youth so that they don't have to go and seek their past to hinder their future, that we set them up with the proper skill sets and communication, self-awareness? How do you read somebody's body language, right? We hear kids all the time getting bullied in situations. Not that bullying is right, but we also ask questions like, well, how did you get here? Well, they was talking about you for 4 days, and we don't know anything about that, which means that there's no communication in the home.
Right.
And so now there's no communication in the home, and now we transfer up and we just spring up as these fully functioning adults, when most of us are really actually still children who haven't adopted the social and mental skills that you guys are speaking of. So how do you introduce that to a preteen, teenager, young adult past where we are right now?
I have 3 children. I am a partnerless parent. They are 19, 18, and 16. My middle child, my son, I get a phone call like, your son turned over a table at school. What the fuck? He's in the gifted class, right? I'm like, he turning over tables? That's wild. Yeah. He the only black kid, so, you know, the black mama, I'm going to beat the brakes off. But at the time, okay, full transparency, I'm also a yoga and meditation instructor. Very, that practice has definitely saved my life, and it gave me a way of being to help my children. So my mother was a police officer, and you know, anybody in your family that's the law, they don't talk. They just threaten to shoot you, right? Like, so that's what I grew up with. So I went to my boss. I said, yo, I need to work for my child's school for a couple of days. So the first thing was sacrifice. I contacted the school. I said, yo, can I sit in class? Teacher was like, fine. I sat in my son's class. I just sat in the back. I ain't say nothing. So the teacher came over to him and said, hey, this is wrong. This answer is wrong. I need for you to check it. But he went off. When I say went off, dude was like, you call me stupid. I said, I'm in the back. I'm like, no, she didn't. I let class go on, and he comes, and I'm like, what's going on? She called me stupid. I said, I sat right here. She pointed to the problem on the page and said, hey, I need for you to check your work. This answer is wrong. And he said, it's not wrong. She said, but it is. I said, young man, first of all, look at the question on the board. Because what was on the board wasn't what he wrote down. And what he wrote down was right. So he had written the question down incorrectly, but answered the incorrect question correctly. So he wasn't wrong.
Right.
And she wasn't wrong.
Right.
But he was distracted. And in his distraction, because he was doodling and I'm watching him, when she said he was wrong, he heard her say he was stupid. Mm-hmm. I said, did those words come out of her mouth? He said, no. I said, so why would you flip that And he was like, because I'm not stupid, that's right. First of all, you have to already believe it's true. So do you think you're stupid? And he paused. So now I know what the issue is. What you believe about you. And then the next part was, don't be mad because somebody is correcting you, because you are distracted. It took me 6 weeks to help my son learn about the voice in his head, his thoughts, right? We have like 50,000 unprovoked thoughts a day, unprovoked. They just ride by this bitch. You ever just sat there and be like, what the fuck that's crazy as fuck. Spaghetti on an alligator, like what? Our lives are a reflection of the
good.
thoughts that we hold on to. You eat alligator with?
That shit is good.
I do love not with ketchup though, with some other sauce.
Don't get me started.
But our lives are a reflection of the thoughts that we hold on to and the thoughts that we let go of. And for children, helping them also means that you have to have a practice. Right. And you also have to acknowledge, supporting them for how it is that they can best communicate. They have a limited vocabulary. Right. But if they also consume a lot of other people's voices, they are emulating thoughts and actions from their mentors, which could very well be, in my kid's case, Chief Keef, which could be television, which could be their peers. So I realized there was also an imbalance of how they were learning what to communicate and what was going on because of what they were consuming. And so some of it for our children, it is literally controlling their environment so that they can learn their voice, their opinions. They can learn the difference between how they feel about something and a fact. Because my kids, my daughters, when I say ready to come, they were littles, ready to box each other over it was hot. It was the dumbest shit ever. One kid was like, you don't need a jacket, it's hot. Yes, I do, it's cold. First of all, what the fuck is going on? And so I said, ladies, fact, it's 67 degrees Fahrenheit, we can prove it. Personal truth, you feel 67 degrees Fahrenheit as hot, you feel it as cold, none of you are wrong. Neither of you. And they were mad. The only reason why they were mad is because their sister wasn't wrong. They didn't care about being right. They didn't want the other one to be wrong. And then that's where my work as a mother started. That I had to figure out, how do I help these young women understand how to share the space of two things can be true at the same time? And why do you feel good about your sister feeling bad?
True.
And I'll add another topic layer to your question. So I have 4 sons.
Bless your heart.
Yeah. So 4 sons. And each one of them has taught me a little something different. The one that's actually helping me produce this, he he has taught me probably the most, but he is the oldest of the 4. But one thing that I have also learned from them along the lines is that, like, I've always been a transparent father, and along the way, especially in these later years as they have become young men, it's important to, especially as they're entering into their manhood and, entering into relationships of their own, it's very important to speak to them about your own flaws, and your own shortcomings. Because I grew up in a house, like my dad, he's the replica of Bill Cosby, like he didn't deliver newspapers when he was 8 years old, and he laid out his own path. Now, I didn't talk to some of his brothers and sisters. The story's a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? But
Did he have
Right.
Jello pudding?
yeah, right. But in his world, that's what he experienced. You know what I'm saying? In his mind. And so to my children, I always try to be transparent with them, even about my flaws. Like because I didn't experience a lot with my father, I told my son, I said, hey, look, I'm new to this. Like, if you want to spend more time with me and I'm not spending that type of time with you, like, let me know. Like, hey, Pop, I want to spend more time with you. I want to do this. I want to do that. Not only is that creating a environment where I'm teaching him to communicate with me, but it's also teaching him an environment where he can communicate with another adult to say that, hey, I'm missing this and this is what I want, you know. And it's teaching me to also do the same, you know, because we all grew up kind of like in a I always go back to slavery, you know, like we were so far removed on so many things when it came to slavery because there was such a huge gap, you know, the gap between coming out of slavery and trying to make a living for your family. Like a lot of people didn't even experience having a parent because they was too busy trying to foster a home that had financials and that you wasn't on the street. And so the communication was lost. And so a lot of the baby boomers generation of communication, it didn't really come across very well. Like we wasn't a generation that came up with communication, you know. And so now we're at the point where we're even having these conversations like we are now about fostering good communication. And it all stems from the environment that we grew up in our parents' house. You know, hey, it was a do what I said, you know. And so now we enter into these adult relationships and, you know, hey, you heard me, right? I had said this. And they like, yeah, I said something too. You know, like, and everybody's confused about what to do because I said this, you said that, and we're like just bumping heads, like two bulls bumping heads. And nobody has a valid solution as to how do I communicate what I'm trying to say and how do you communicate what you're trying to say, and we can still talk about it and come either to agreement or even a point where we agree to disagree. And even to highlight what you said with your children, like agreeing to disagree. You know, hey, you cold, I'm hot.
Who cares?
Okay, you cold, I'm hot. That's it. Like, it's nothing else to that. Like, I don't get cold quick, but Candace does. You know, she be like, it's cold. I'm like, okay, well, you cold. You know, like I'm straight. You know, even in this environment, I'm like, hey, if the heat didn't work, I'm cool. But I'm like, hey, for all of y'all, I want y'all to be warm because I realize that's not the theme. It's not about me. I can't think about just me being warm. And hey, if I'm warm, you all should be straight too. So I think that even with being totally transparent, to answer your question, to be totally transparent with your children and to teach them how to communicate with you is probably the first solution, you know. And not only that, but to keep in mind that when they tell you how they feel, you can't just, boom, you know, snap off. Because when you snap off, that teaches them something. That teaches them how to, you know, to respond. So later on in life, when you say something to me, then I'm going to respond. I'm going to react.
True. And
what I heard you say, like the teacher incident, when you said that my answer was wrong, I heard that you stupid. You know, and that's not even the case. You know, so that's just my little take on, you know, to answer your question.
Yeah.
I'll give the floor to anybody else.
I like to joke around and say I have 154 children. One is biological, the other 153 are my students. And I teach high school. So, as you know, high school age. Yeah. And it is in an underserved community on top of that, where they are a product of their environment. So their communication is that of their environment. Unfortunately, at the beginning of every school year, we can just about know we're going to lose 3 in the door due to gun violence. That is the community I serve. And so to talk to them about communicating, even this past week was homecoming weekend. Our principal had to get on the intercom speaker and say, look, talk to your peers. Make wise decisions, because I have no problem with shutting homecoming down. I don't care what you paid for. 26 fights in 1 week. This is their form of communication. You looking at me, you touching me, all these things that are disrespectful in their eyes. But they have no other means of communication except for, I'm gonna put these hands on you. And a very real, like, our kids fight. Like, it's not just a shoving. It be blood. Like, you hear like a stampede of horses in our hallway. Our security men are big men. Like, I gotta close my door. I don't know what's going on out there, but I got to close my door because my job is to keep the rest of you safe. Have a seat. And so often, if I'm lucky to get to my lesson plan, we talk a lot. We communicate a lot. I'm the culinary teacher, by the way, so they also, you know, they listen to me. They love me in that regard because they also know that they get to eat. They get to cook. They don't want those privileges taken away. But they also know that I'm coming from a very genuine place. And often in our PLC meetings and our staff meetings, they're like, what are you doing? Why, when such and such is going off, they want to see Miss Scott? Don't be offended. I just speak their language. Like, you don't look like them, you don't dress like them, you don't talk like them, and guess what? You chose to work in this district. So be prepared to, in my opinion, something about you will have to change because you have to meet these kids where they are. Otherwise, they're not going to respect you. And trust, street level, that has to be earned. It's not given just because you think you're in a place of authority. You have to show them. And I show them every single day. I meet them with where they're at. I speak their language. It might not be professional, but it's understood. My
I think
point
that's
is
the
very
hard
much
part
well heard.
as a parent, though.
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely have not displayed healthy communication tactics. One, because coming out of an abusive marriage with my children was hard. You know, like I don't know what's going on. So when you are a parent and you're in crisis, you know, like,
Well, that's, yeah.
you know, like you really don't. Everybody's in survival mode, and so
And that's traumatic for both the adult and the child.
for everyone, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to grow and learn with your kids because your kids will not let you forget you are a trash ass human being right now. And and they will give themselves all the grace. I'm a kid. I could be trash. You 42. You trash as fuck. You know, like, first of all, watch your tone, right?
That part.
Right?
Like, no one asked you.
They are so hurtful. And it isn't easy modeling things that you also are learning with them. My mama did not sit down. There was no there was prayer and get your ass beat. There was
no gentle parenting.
There was no, we are not, like, if you were born in the 80s and you had a parent from the civil rights movement and their parent was a part of the silent generation and their mama was born on the tail end of slavery, what are we talking about? And I don't
miss
tell
the
that to my
extension cord.
kids for pity, but I do try and help them understand, like, the parenting energy in our family does have a history to it. It's the reason why there isn't a lot of touching and loving that has to be learned. And as my kids are irritated with me, they love their grandmother, who sometimes I'm like, I could beat you with a brick.
This ain't what you did.
And that's not how I feel about my grandmother, who can do no wrong, who my mother's like, if you only knew.
If you only knew.
If you only knew who she was to me as a mother. And then how my grandmother didn't even get to live with her mother. She saw her mother die in a garden in Louisiana. You know, so I realized that I I am trying my best, and my children also are much more aware, and they are supported to articulate how they feel.
Yeah.
Right? They have therapists and counselors that will tell them and teach them, and they come home with the ability to, Mother, will you hold space for me? Bitch, if you don't clean these dishes, and I'm going to hold this blunt while you wash these dishes, right? Because now I'm also I feel small. I feel small that me and my kids are emotionally the same age. That's hard.
And
That's
that
hard.
is a very true statement that I often have to share with my students when they are transparent with me and they tell me about their upbringing. And I'm like, you know what? We can't, mom and dad is trying to figure this out right along with you. We have to show them grace. And I know that's hard to hear as a kid. What the F you mean? I got to show them grace. They had me.
Right.
I'm the child. And that's a very hard thing to get them to even conceptualize in their brains, like, why? And
It's not
like,
easy being black. Let's just say that.
It's
It
not.
ain't easy being black. It's not easy being raised in Chicago. It's not easy raising kids in Chicago. I think all of us want, I prayed every day to not get murdered. And I still have that prayer, let a bullet miss me. But I also have survivor's guilt because if I feel like I prayed the bullet away and then prayed it somewhere else. And I realize I parent with that also from this place of I just want my kids to be able to live long enough to keep praying that a bullet misses them. And it's not easy when you live in this environment really trying to love them, but also protect them and also figure out how to love yourself, how to forgive your parents, how to live, in this
It's a
crazy,
lot.
it is a lot,
It's
but
overwhelming.
I think it is healthy to know that we have teachers that go above and beyond and share themselves and parent our children when we don't know how. So thank you. Because I know my children have teachers that they love and adore that they wish that they could trade out. Wow. But, I think we're all doing our best. And as, now having older children, there's a lot that I think I could have done differently. But at the very least, I'm aware. And I'm also learning how to be comfortable with acknowledging that I had unhealthy habits that hurt everybody. And it's not easy when your kids are like, and I still don't forgive you. And it still hurts.
And that is a very harsh
Yes.
reality.
I'm talking, then you come on, sit in the answer seat, ma'am. You know how this goes. So wait. We gonna get the newcomer first. But what I'm gonna say also is that, even with us, like, see, the baby boomer generation wasn't they wasn't equipped to have conversations.
No. Just go to work.
I have this famous conversation, and it just happened like last Father's Day. Like I was, or was it the Father's Day? I think it was Father's Day before then. But anyway, I wanted to play the drums so bad when I was a kid. Look at somebody laughing. We was at Tavern on LaGrange, and they was playing the music, and I'm just over there, and it just dawned on me because it had became so far from my memory that I had forgot that at an early age at Beasley that yeah, I was percussion, and my mama was like, "Hey, your daddy ain't gonna let you play these drums, but I'm gonna let you do it, for a little bit before he find out." And I always just loved and respected that because I think she saw like that I needed to have that.
You needed an
She didn't want to take it away from me, but she was still trying to maintain her loyalty to her marriage.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
That was
But also, like, hey, this is a kid. Like, he needs to experience this. And so I had got like really mad. Like I was pissed. Like I called my pops up like, hey, why you ain't let me play them drums? Like, and he didn't even remember. Like, and then he had to think about it. And when he came back to me, he was like, you were so advanced and I really didn't even know how to parent you. Because you were yeah, I was a smart motherfucker. And he didn't know how to parent that. And he didn't have to say nothing else. Like, I respected that because I knew as a parent, you know, like how much that he had to take out of him to say that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what he was thinking back then. You know, I know a lot of, you know, I was raised in the Jehovah's Witness family. I knew a lot of that had to do with that. But I respected the fact that time that he said, I didn't know how to parent you. And that I was like, hey, you ain't got to say nothing else. They came from an era of just do what I say.
Right.
You know, slave mentality. And so when we examine a lot about how we interact with our kids and how we interact in relationships, we have to really take that into consideration. They try to put this so far back in our history so that we don't talk about it, but it's so imperative for us to know about those different type of, or that particular type of topic, I should say, because it has affected us on a massive scale. You know, our communication, we wasn't talking, we was just doing. You know, go out there, go in the field. You know, and so we carried that on like to our kids. Hey, go do that. Well, why? Because I said so. We didn't even, first off, we didn't even have the audacity to ask why.
No.
And even if they thought that we was thinking why, that was your ass.
Right.
You know, like, what you say? I didn't say nothing. Damn. I heard you thinking it. You know what I'm saying? And so now it's like even with my youngest, I have to sometimes like catch myself and explaining different things because I have to realize that he's asking because he might want to know the logic behind it. He's not really questioning my authority in a sense, but you know, why shouldn't I do that? You know, it not just because I said so, you know. And so that's a whole nother aspect, and we got a audience member. So,
how you guys doing? First of all, I want to commend you guys for running an awesome podcast. I think this topic, there's so many layers to it. I wanted to talk on kind of growing and learning with your children. I have a 13-year-old. His name's Jalen. By the way, my name's Kevin. But I think for me, it's been very important to understand that you have to learn with your kids. And it is okay because as they grow, you have to grow, right? And a lot of my past traumas with not growing up with a father helped me address my issues with my son. Also seeing that he was a reflection of me. So all of my flaws I was ended up seeing in him. So I was able to address them. And the biggest thing with my son is communication, right? But the biggest thing upon communication is him expressing himself on who he actually is. And me holding him to that and holding him accountable for him being a one of one. God made you, okay? So you are only a one of one. So let's make sure that you hold yourself to that. And taking everything that I didn't have and not reflecting that on him, but growing that into this relationship, saying, hey, I didn't have my father. I didn't have these conversations that I needed to have, but I know what I would have wanted to have. So that's what I always push on to my son, and to have these conversations where he's trying to be someone else, as you say, like you go into a class and they're emulating what they see on television, or they're emulating what they're hearing on the radio, and to me to check him and say, hey, no, stop. You are born a leader. You are born a one of one. You should be only doing what you're supposed to be doing, not what someone else is doing. And for me as a father to realize to like take a step back and to ask him those questions, like anytime he gets in trouble, I ask him, do you know why you're getting in trouble? For him to understand the level of understanding on no, I get it, Pops. I get it. I hear what you're saying. But do you? You know, because it's important while I'm sitting down and talking to you. I've learned over the years that it's not important to do as I say, but did you hear me? Did you understand what I'm saying? Because that goes way more into effect onto just knowing that I'm of authority and you need to respect that. Because that bleeds into something else when we're talking about policing and things like that. You just think that they're in the right. When a lot of times dealing with our culture, they're not. They're just adjusted to deal with us in a certain type of way. And that doesn't mean that it's the right manner, you know. So I put that on my son a lot, to speak his mind and be as creative and being yourself as possible. And I have to grow and learn that as well, because I'm not a 13-year-old. I'll be 40 years old. So it's me understanding where he's at, you know, and that's always going to be a constant learning. And to like jump into just some more stuff that you guys were talking about as far as relationships, it's important. No, it's important to learn with your relationship, learn in your relationship. So me and my spouse, we've been together 15 years. It's gonna be 16 years. I have a 13-year-old. Appreciate it. And yeah. Someone dealt with me for 15 years, and I am allowed to deal with. Yeah. That's my beautiful lady, Tisa. Yes.
Bless your heart.
But to say the least is the want part on our relationship is always to understand that we're consistently learning each other. We're consistently wanting to do what's right for each other. And that is not, it's easy to say, but of course the difficult part is putting your feet on the ground, right? And understanding that what you told to me, I have to ponder and sit back and say, if you have the best interest for me, then I have to understand that you are speaking truth into this relationship. So if you pointing out a flaw of mine, I can't just be like, no, you're wrong, but to take a step back and say, let me see to some degree if you are right in what you're saying, and if I can make that change, I will, and I'm going to try to make that change as best as possible, and vice versa. Because if I am telling you upon something, because you guys said it earlier, is about people won't tell you about yourself, and you'll surround yourself with this type of group, knowing that you are not your true self just because someone hasn't vouched for that. But in a relationship that is truly for you and is supposed to bring you the best out of you, you have to listen to those types of people. And that's the same thing with parenting, and that's the same thing with being in a great relationship. That's the same thing with being a great student. You have to learn who's the teacher, and you're not always the teacher.
No,
You're always a student as well. So, you know, there's going to be some things that you see in yourself that you might never address, but they are to be addressed. And you have to address them with yourself while you're building and learning with that person.
Amen.
All right,
Nice.
that's all I got to say.
Right. So let me get focused. Let me go back. I commend you for saying that, hey, there's some things I don't know, and sharing that with your children, that I'm flawed as a parent, and really say to them, I don't know, right? That ain't what you said, but again, that's what I heard, right? Because that takes a lot because of our pride, right? That I don't know, I'm not sure, because to what you said, E, it's the slave mentality. I'm gonna go back to the spiritual standpoint, because from slavery, it was so embedded in us to just do what we were told, and that was our only leadership. That was all we saw, and that was all we know. And so we emulate the parenting that we had, right? Until we get out there and we go over other people's houses, or we watch stuff on TV. I know from my mother, she didn't let us go over other people's house, and that was her reason. She was like, it's gonna take me too long to deprogram you when you come home. You'll have plenty of time. Right now, I'm gonna put as much into you as I possibly can, right? And so when it was time for me to parent, I fall up under F a kid up act, right? That don't mean it was right. That was just how I raised mine. However, I did do some things different and was very transparent and encouraged the communication and tell me how you feel. Just because you're small, you're just a small person. And my mother raised me. I got kicked out of junior church. I got kicked out because downstairs in the basement with the kids. Yeah, they put me out, right? Because she taught me to speak up, right? Not be disrespectful, but speak up. As well as when you're asked a question that goes back to what we were saying earlier in the relationship, say what we mean when we say. People will ask you a question expecting you just to say yes because that's what they want to hear. If you think about it, every day at work, in your person, people will ask you something, and when you say no, they appall. Well, you asked me a question, that means I had the option to say yes or no, right? And so my mother taught me that as a child, and in turn, I parented the same way, but tried to teach, be respectful with it. You have an opinion, and it's my role to guide that, to say, you know, when you're in a room with adults, it's still a certain respect, but you have an opinion. And so to hear you say that you did that with your children, I just want to commend you, because they'll eventually respect transparency.
Right.
Over you tried to put a facade. When they find out you wasn't who you said you was, that's why so many people as adults don't mess with their parents, because they sold me a lie. They made me think that they was this perfect person when they wasn't, right? And it's some things children can't handle. And it's going back to your question, how do we do this communication? I think this was pretty much originally geared towards relationships. But that's why we have so many adults that can't stand on their own and communicate, because they just grew up, now they're grown. And first thing we want to say is that's a grown person who was never taught how to communicate, that was never taught how to be in tune with their emotions, right? So I think to go back to that, to develop our children, to teach them respectfully how to speak up, and what's the difference between mad and angry? What's the difference between being disappointed and hurt? We quick to say I was mad, and my mother, baby, dogs get mad. No, you were disappointed. Your feelings got hurt. It's a difference between mad, disappointed, angry, and we don't teach that in the black community.
Right.
We don't teach that in the schools. We don't teach communication because we assume your mama didn't teach you that at home, which I'm the first one. I'd be like, it's her mama. Bring her mama to me. I can tell you what's wrong with her mama. Her mama didn't teach her nothing, right? But we also know those. I'm the baby and the only girl. Some people are only children. We know when you have siblings, y'all can live in the same house and get taught the same thing, and that one child go over here, right? It's called choices. So that was big for me too, because I watched my brothers. I was the baby. I'm like, so you just decided to do that shit, because that didn't go on, and them first two boys didn't do it, but you, Peanut, decided to do it. So when it came to my daughter, right, I had to teach her choices, right? Because you can be raised in a two-parent household, spiritual, right from wrong, and you make a choice to sell dope. You didn't have to. You didn't even see it. But it was a decision, it was a choice. And so I would think to answer your question is to continue to teach them that they have choices, to teach them to communicate and to identify with those emotions, because it's not just one emotion. And then living in Chicago in our day and age, where, as you said, they're being led and taught by social media and the rappers, and if the mother is sitting them in front of the box, or the dad or whoever in front of the TV, because now all we do is shove a laptop in their face, right, to shut them up. Man. Here's your laptop. Where your iPad at? Shut up. No, I'm driving. Go get your iPad.
Trying to take it away.
Eventually, you know what I mean? That's who they become. They're being programmed, right? We're being programmed indirectly and directly. I just had a conversation with my mom tonight. We pretty much pick up more of what we see versus what they say.
Right.
That's why I asked you, young man, what was your previous wife seeing as to why she wouldn't worship with you? Because I know a strong black sister, we like, what you gonna tell me when you don't do it? I'm not following you even though I'm married to you. Or even though we're in a relationship, we go by what we see versus what we're told. So that was a great question for our children, Kiera. How do we teach them to communicate so when they do get in a relationship, we're expecting them just to know how to communicate because they're an adult. And so that's why immediately when I'm mentoring, I ask about your background. I ask about your upbringing so I can know what I'm dealing with. And my mentors will say, you don't remember taking me to lunch saying, baby, first I got to take you back to kindergarten. I can't even deal with you as a manager until I deal with you as a young girl. because the way you manage your people is based on your upbringing and how you view people. And if you don't value yourself like your son, for whatever reason, he saw being wrong was dumb, right? That could have came from home, that could have came from another student, but somewhere he was programmed. So we have to make sure we're programming and getting them in tune to the right station, because they're going to eventually be adults. And that's when I'm mentoring my young girls, is that, would you date the son you dating? Would you date the son you raising? And I'm going to end on that level.
Yeah. I knew it was bad for me when I realized I didn't want my son to meet a woman like me.
A lot of women wouldn't say that.
Right, that's why.
That's honest.
A lot of women would not say what you just said.
Yeah, that's honest. That's honest.
I tell my boys all the time, don't be like me. Be better than your father.
Wow.
How y'all doing? My name is June. I'm Kiara's best friend. I have a question for the older than me.
The older than me.
Oh, I'm not.
I'm 32.
Don't go
I look
there.
like a child, but for those who had like issues with their parents growing up, how did you learn to forgive them even at your older age? And how to get over what the trauma was that you experienced to try to love them like a parent, and did they try?
It depends on
Rock, paper, scissors.
the trauma or what was going on, because if nobody if it does any relationship, I don't care what it was, if it doesn't mean you any good, I can love you from afar, but I don't have to talk to you every day. So it depends on the level of, like, you know, if a daughter is molested by her father, I don't believe that she is obligated later on in life to really have a relationship, hey daddy, every day with her father. So what level are you talking about?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so my mother got pregnant with me when she was 15 and had me when she was 16.
Okay.
And when she was 4, her real mother died, and a new woman came into her life who they lied to me my whole life and told me it was my real grandma. So my father let the cat out of the bag. But the whole family I was raised with wasn't my family, and my mother treated me the way that she treated me because of how that lady treated her. She wanted to abort me. She didn't. When my mother's water broke, she didn't want to take us to the hospital. It was all of these crazy things.
Okay.
My mother neglected me as a mother. She provided for me. We was never homeless, never hungry, never none of that. But she didn't hug me and kiss me and do none of those things. My grandmother did that, but not her mother, my father's mother. And I'm 32 right now, and I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 24. I'm 32 right now, so that's like 9 years. She wasn't nurturing. She didn't hug me, she didn't kiss me, she didn't tell me she loved me my whole life. So, and we're identical. We the same person. And even when I announced that I was a lesbian, we didn't talk about that. She just started buying me boy clothes.
Wow.
But I recently had a flare up and moved back to Chicago from Orlando, and she took me in. She put the house in my name, like things that I never thought my mother would ever do. And she expressed to me, this is the first time she ever admitted this, she said, what I want to say to you is that I'm sorry because I didn't nurture you. She didn't hug me, she didn't kiss me, she just did my hair, make sure I was fly. But she didn't love me. And she has 2 other sons, my little brothers, and she loves them. So I was just like, maybe it was easier to be a mother to 2 boys than it was to me. And I'm not even a feminine girl, you know what I mean? So it made me, I had to build that relationship to where right now we're okay. We're on even ground. I don't hate her. I used to though. Cause it was just like, I'm your twin and why you don't treat me like a girl? You don't, and it really hurt my feelings. But the older I got, the more I realized she wasn't raised like that. So she couldn't give me the love that she didn't have.
Right.
But I had to figure that out on my own. My grandmother had to tell me like, she wasn't raised right. So you would think that would change how you are as a mother to be a different person than that lady was to you, even though it wasn't your real mother. You should be able to still give that love, but she wasn't able to do it up until recently. So that's why I asked the question, because I'm still trying to forgive her.
So I feel your pain because my biological father and my mother did not make it. So to the point where I didn't know he was my father until I was 14. All right. And what you're saying about family, I had a stepfather. And my stepfather loved me. I mean, he was in my life since I was 5.
Okay.
And when you say family, that wasn't your blood family. Family don't always mean blood.
I know.
All right? Keep that in mind. Family don't always mean blood. My stepfather and his family, till this day, I can leave here right now and go to anybody's house. And they're going to love me. They're going to embrace me. So first, embrace the love that you were given.
I never told you that.
No, I'm just saying, because I understand where you're coming from. Because what happens is a lot of parents don't understand the psychological downward effect that when we start figuring out who our family, like when my mother told me who my daddy was, that hurt me in her relationship.
Because you feel like she lied to you?
Yes.
Okay.
But like right now, we don't talk.
So the lady that I tell you, that was my mother's mother after my real grandmother died, she treated me like she treated my mother when I got older. When I became a lesbian, she didn't like it. And then I moved from Chicago to Orlando to be with my father when I was 17 years old. And she told me, I can't believe you're leaving your mama with 2 kids. What'd I do? I didn't impregnate my mama.
Can I interject for a second?
I want to go ahead.
No,
Well,
go ahead, because you was waiting on it. Go ahead.
It's okay. I just want to make a point before it's forgotten and gets lost in the shuffle. I believe that one of the hardest things that we'll have to do as adults is to pretty much forgive an apology we may never receive. We may never receive it, but we may just have to start that journey because the forgiveness is really for you. It's not for them.
Right.
There it is.
And when you forgive, it sets you free. However they choose to move in life, that's on them. The forgiveness is your responsibility. That's all I wanted to say.
So I just want to say, first of all, I truly appreciate your transparency and coming up here and
Yes,
saying
thank
all
you.
of those things and seeking, and again, not that we are the philosophers or the experts, but even just wanting to speak out so that you could receive some type of counsel or some type of support. Also to you and your with lupus, I truly hope you are overcoming and you are better. And okay, all right. So what I did want to say is, for me, I had to learn to accept my parents for who they are, how they are. It is what it is. If I had any other expectation for the extra compassion, the extra love, the extra this, so on and so forth. Like I have plenty of girlfriends that are daddy's girls. I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that my father was like, really made me even feel like a daddy's girl after probably elementary. And so I hear what you're saying, but I've had to learn to accept them for where they are, because just as Tasha said, I don't want to carry anything that has the potential to unnerve me. I don't want to carry their traumas. I don't want to carry their grief. I don't want to carry anything. That was their life. I have an opportunity to live. So I accepted them for where they are. I'm not saying that it's always easy. It is a lot of prayer that I have to do. And even in that, you're seeing a place where I had to evolve. For a very good time, I was extremely unbothered. And I mean that in the sense that I didn't love them, I didn't hate them, I just kind of knew they existed very much. And my parents were, and they're not here to defend themselves, but not to knock them per se, but what I felt or what my experience was, I got to a place where I was just unbothered. But I could still, even in that unbothered space, really just by the grace of God, I could still respect their position. But what I really had to learn for me was boundaries. I had to learn boundaries. I had to recognize that I allowed their isms, as I would say, whatever ish they felt, was affecting me because I allowed it. I gave room for it. I let it reoccur. I invited it in. I didn't. I made the assumption that it wasn't going to be here, and whatever. I had to set up boundaries, and I had to stand on those boundaries. Not in a disrespectful, whatever, but I had to stand in those boundaries. Where it got to a place where still giving reverence to them as my mother and father, I would literally just withdraw from it, because telling the truth, shaming the whole devil, I don't want to have to come at you like somebody on the street. I want to be able to respect you. I got to go before the Lord at the end of this. I'm not trying to say, yeah, I squared up with her, you know? So I had to, hey, you know? No, so I had to come to that place. I had to understand this is who they are. This is how they're going to be. I can choose to let these things continue to offend, continue to set me back or whatever, or I can set the boundaries in place. Now, having set those boundaries in place, and I'm not saying it was an overnight thing, it took a lot of time, a lot of time. But even with those boundaries that I was setting and establishing in place, it really kind of sheltered me in a sense, where it was, here's what I've said, here's what it is. It's okay if you don't like it, it's okay if you don't respect it, but here's what's gonna happen. And eventually they had to come and respect those boundaries, right? And they had to fall within those boundaries. So for me, I set those boundaries in place to protect me and mine. I did. I forgave them.
You have
So
to.
let me say this. We've all been through circumstances and things of that nature, but I will say for me, growing into my adulthood, I learned to forgive somebody instantly. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I could be standing in complete tears and will turn around and say, you know what, I forgive you, and I hope you can forgive me for whatever it is I've done for you. Because here's why. I am not going to carry it. I'm not gonna carry it. Because at that point, I'm giving you the power. I'm not gonna carry it. I don't want to carry whatever it is, whatever iniquity it may be that could bury itself inside of me. Not doing it. I'm not doing it. I don't know how to say it. So for me, I forgave instantly. Once I forgave them instantly, right, I was allowed to then do the healing on me. I was allowed to then reflect me. I was allowed to take care of me. And then I could see for me how I need to be and the ways that would allow me to grow and be healthy, and then be able to invite them into those spaces. So yes, I forgave them. Now, I will also say God was good all the time, because he definitely poured out a lot of grace and mercy for me to be able to do so. But I you know, not to get too biblical, but I mean, I'm not going to be ashamed of them. I really stood on John 14:27, which is where I got my unbothered mindset from. The peace that he gives me, not the peace that I need to seek from them, or the worldly peace or the fragile peace, the peace that he gives me, which is unbothered, unaffected, Passion Translation. So that's what I stood on. And it got to a point where I had even had a t-shirt made, child, every time they came over. And it was like, okay, I know we're going to have a situation. I just kind of stood there like, And not only that, they even got to a place now where I can see them like minding themselves in the moment. Like, oh, I can see them looking at it like, oh, I'm about to, yeah, catch yourself. Catch yourself. I got your coat ready. Catch yourself. You know? But yes, I did forgive them. It is possible to forgive, but I do think you have to decide for yourself what you are capable of, as opposed to what she may or may not be able to provide. She may never provide for you what you need. She may never show you that. She may just be truly unable to do so for whatever reason. I don't know how she was loved.
That's true. One thing that I, had to learn with my father, and it was, you know, post-adult and, you know, kids and everything, and my son, he just asking, he want to comment, and so I'm I'll let him get up here because he got something to say too. But
Speak your piece.
one thing that I had to learn was his environment, you know, and that's very important. Do you have kids? Okay, so so that's going to play a lot into how you feel right now, because things that you realize as a parent, you don't think about. Yeah, and that's true on so many levels. I mean, you realize a lot in being a parent on, you know, things that you intended to do, things that got misconstrued, you know, your rightful intentions. It's a slippery slope. you know, and I had to realize even with my father, things that existed in his world that I couldn't even fathom. You know, the way that he was raised was based on his environment at that time. He lost his mother when he was 8 years old. And so a lot of how his upbringing was with me was based on that, because I remember on thousands of occasions where he would constantly tell me, I might not always be here.
Yeah.
And so that was based on his personal experience, that he didn't have a mom at 8 years old. So a lot of what I desired from him, you know, like I watched my cousins and their dad would, you know, I learned how to throw a football in prison. I was 26 years old. You know, I learned sports there because I was never taught that. You know, like I've never been outside and just, and I'm not saying any of this to throw shade at him, because now I understand his environment. You know, his father didn't have time to be going outside with him. He had 9 kids. You know, and so while I was, you know, like, hey, throw a ball with me, you know, like he was interested in providing some type of financial support for me in case something happened to him, because that was his primary focus at the time, was I want to make sure that my son is okay if I do happen to leave this world. And so a lot of the animosity and the anger that I had towards him, because I grew up, I remember at a very early age asking my mother, like, why he don't love me? Yes, I forgave him because I knew that I had areas that were affected in me raising my own kids that I needed them to forgive me, you know. And until you know, get to that position, I gave a podcast months ago about forgiveness is a choice.
I was about to say, yeah. That's
You know, it's either you're going to choose to do it or you're not.
Right.
You know, you
don't
don't
need their permission.
Yeah, you don't need permission. You don't need an explanation. It's just, you know, hey, I'm going to forgive you or I don't. You know, as long as you don't, it forever hinders you in
That
a
binds
sense.
you. Right.
You know, you still hold on to all these old things, and trust and believe your mom ain't losing no sleep. And I ain't saying that to be cruel, but she ain't losing. Yeah, because see, she has forgiven herself. You know, it's certain things that my son, you know, I wasn't in his life, man, until 12. You know, and there's dynamics around that, but I also had to forgive myself, and knowing that what happened in certain aspects, maybe it could have been prevented, but I don't know that, you know, but I know I'm here now. You know, sometimes us holding back forgiveness can be such a hindrance, because you not forgiving her is just, you know, you're just holding her in a balance. Like, you did this, you did this, you did that. You know, you all could have maybe a much more wonderful relationship, you know, based on you, you know. And I know you got a lot to say, and I'm gonna finish what I got to say. It's based on you, you know, because it's not forgiveness isn't based on the fact that the person is going to make it right. Because all the time you can't make it right. You think about people that you see in courtroom scenes where they have people have killed kids, and they say, "Hey, I forgive you." It's the kid that they killed can never be brought back. You know what I'm saying? It's just so that they're not held in bondage, and they can't move on with their life. You know, you can't move on with your life because you have made a conscious decision, and you might not realize it is a conscious decision, but it is. You've made a conscious decision that I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to keep this at your doorstep until you make it right. But what if they can't make it right? The things that you have, they can't make it right. See, I can't. Hold on, I see you keep raising your hand. It's certain things with that one over there I can't make right. I can only be a buck with him and say, hey, this is like I was totally transparent with him. He got real mad one time, and I'm transparent on this podcast. I tell anybody. I told him, I said, hey, I wasn't around when you was younger because I was young. I had you. I was 21 years old. Your mother was acting like she didn't want me to be around, so I said, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to be in the streets with my friends. And he had every right to cop an attitude. He was like, what? So you rather have been with your friends than to be with me? You know, and part of it was also like he heard something else, you know, with that. But I had to respect that. Like I would tell them like, hey, say what you want to say. You could cuss. I don't give you this floor. You could cuss. You could tell me however you want. Hey, fuck nigga, you left me. You know, I'm okay with that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because let's keep it a book. That's how you feel.
We gonna leave
know
with that.
That's how you
He
feel.
had the floor now. He was
That's
trying
how-
to use it appropriately, apparently.
Yeah, that's how you feel. I got to respect that. You know what I'm saying? I was doing what I was doing, and so I have to accept that. But at the end of the day, hey, from here to the day I die or to the day you die, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna, you know, when you need me, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna show up. You know what I'm saying? And that's the only thing that I can do. And so see, your mom has reached a place where she is okay with the decisions that were made. You know what I'm saying? And not that she's happy with it, but that's what she knows has happened, and she can't change that. Right. You want the situation to change, it can't change. You know, and I'll let you get this comment because I gotta get somebody else before we move on.
We've had a talk. Me and my mother have had a talk, a face-to-face, adult, woman-to-woman talk. She's acknowledged that she didn't raise me like with nourishment and love and caring and hugging and kissing and all of that. She just provided for me. She was an excellent provider. She's always had a drug dealer boyfriend. We never wanted for nothing. But when things change and I wanted love, because I like love. My grandmother raised me, so that's who hugged me, kissed me, told me about love and how to care about people and how to be considerate and compassionate. My mother wasn't raised like that, so she couldn't raise me a way that she wasn't raised. The lady that raised her was a really mean woman. She was really mean. And my mother wasn't mean to me, she just wasn't nourished. And she couldn't find the nourishment in her to give to me. Now, my brothers is different. I don't know if because they boys and it's different, but she loves them. She never shared that same love with me, but she's admitted to me that she knows that that's where she was wrong. When I came to Chicago and I was dying, she let me in the house. She took care of me, but then we got into it, and then that was a whole nother thing. Like, you want to square up? We finna square up, but because I have so much resentment against my mother, I didn't want to try to fight her because I'm gonna hurt you because of how I feel, and I hate that I harbor those feelings, but I'm getting better. I'm getting to a point where it's not so much conflict, but she did something like a couple weeks ago where she forgot me, like literally forgot me. She was supposed to come get me from my grandmother's house. We was going to my cousin's funeral, and she just forgot. I forgot to pick you up. I'm sorry, but that hurt me because I'm the oldest. She only got 3 kids. I'm the oldest, and I'm your firstborn child, your only girl. So it did a lot of things to me where I had to go to therapy and talk to my therapist, and she was like, she didn't mean it. You can't prove it.
Well, you have to decide for yourself.
Yeah.
What do you want? Number one, you don't have the right to hold on to that grudge because it's going to hinder you later on. Hey, hold on. You don't have
that
a
grudge
right.
that what happened was a trigger to
Right.
previous circumstances. So that's why he's saying you're holding on
You
because
holding
it's still
on.
creating a trigger. She can
You-
forget you tomorrow.
Right.
She can forget to call you back tomorrow, and it would create
In
another
order
trigger.
for you to grow, in order for you to be better, in order for you to be successful, and I'm talking from experience, you don't have the right not to forgive.
Right.
If God forgives you for everything that you ever did,
70
Come on.
times 70.
everything,
Come on.
the things that
70 times 7.
the things that we don't know you did that was wrong,
Right.
God forgave you. We don't have the right to not to forgive nobody. And I'm telling you from experience, once you let that go, you're going to skyrocket.
That's
You're
such a
going to have better relationships with people.
yes.
you're going to have better relationships with her. Now, like I said, you don't have to be every day talking to mom, but you're going to be better as a person, as a human being. Because what we don't realize, some of our